It's time for your local farm news week in review here on Little Falls Radio. This week in farm news, the nation's leading agricultural co-op, CHS, announced that it will distribute an estimated $518 million to farmers, ranchers, and cooperatives, extending a record of what it described as significant cash returns to owners. The 2015 cash distribution is based on CHS's net income of $1.1 billion, the company's second highest on record for the fiscal year ending on August 31st of last year. Over the past 6 years, CHS has returned more than $2.6 billion in cash to its agricultural producer and member cooperative owners, an amount equal to that returned over the 33 fiscal years prior from 1977 through 2009. The distribution beginning this month to about 1,100 member cooperatives and nearly 59,000 individual members and others includes cash patronage paid based on their fiscal 2014 business with CHS. CHS is also distributing cash to member cooperatives that redeems equity in the company they earned in prior years. In addition, CHS will redeem equities of eligible individual members throughout 2015 and also pay quarterly dividends to owners of its 5 classes of CHS preferred stock. Patronage is based on business done with CHS by member owner cooperatives and individual farmers and ranchers during fiscal year 2014, while equity redemptions and preferred stock distributions represent retirement of ownership in CHS earned in past years. And this is Farm Director Scott Colomb. I'm speaking with Aaron Danninger, the FFA Chapter Advisor here at Little Falls High School. Aaron, it's my understanding that FFA Week is coming up. What can we expect to see from the Little Falls FFA Chapter?
That's correct. We have a lot of events planned throughout the week, mostly celebrating FFA and our teachers who help make FFA possible. So we will have lunchtime activities for students, dress-up days that coordinate with agriculture, mostly with FFA colors and celebrating the pride of FFA, along with a teacher and staff breakfast. So those are some ways that we can help out. One other piece is that FFA has a cornerstone of being community servants. And so we'll be distributing food at Ruby's Pantry as well on Monday night. And so that's just one more way we can help out as FFA members.
Why did FFA create a week to sort of celebrate the organization?
Well, back in 1930, there was an FFA Day, and that was decided in, I believe, 1946 that a day wasn't good enough, and so it became an FFA Week. And it is always actually celebrated on the week of George Washington's birthday, which falls on February 22nd, which is why this 22nd through the 28th of February is National FFA Week.
You mentioned the community activities that FFA does, whether it be with Ruby's Pantry. What are some other activities that FFA, at least the Little Falls chapter, does throughout the year?
Well, we have different community service activities like we talked about. Another one we did this last fall was at Lindbergh State Park, where we went and raked leaves. So that was a really good event for all the members to get together and do something great for someone else. Throughout the year, we participate in several different contests. They're called career development events. Thus far this year, we have 7 teams that have qualified for a state convention, which will be in April. But we have 5 teams left to compete. So we'll be looking to have a large delegation at State FFA Convention.
And you mentioned the contest, and it's my understanding you guys had one a little over almost 2 weeks ago. How did the teams place?
We did. We had Parliamentary Procedure, which placed first. That was very exciting for those 6 members. Along with Faith Gangle did the Prepared Public Speaking, and she was 5th in our region. And Samantha Phillips was 3rd in our region, and she will also compete at state in Creed Speaking.
Now, you mentioned Creed Speaking and Prepared Public Speaking, but let's go back to the Creed Speaking. What is Creed Speaking? And for some people that may not know what it is.
Creed Speaking is for 9th graders or younger members only, which makes it a very unique contest. And because of that, they are charged with reciting the FFA Creed, written by E.M. Tiffany and adopted at the 3rd National FFA Convention. So this has been with us since the beginning, and it really tells us what an FFA member is, what they believe in. So they recite that creed, and then they answer questions about their personal beliefs that go along with the creed.
I'm sure a lot of people see that FFA, it's not just something that kids do in high school. I mean, they create lifelong skills. What are some of the skills that the students get to learn through FFA that they get to apply out in the real world?
Well, FFA really develops the potential for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success through agricultural education. And so students develop each of those through career development events, serving as chapter officers, coordinating different events. We have several committees that members serve on. So they develop a work ethic. They develop cooperation, collaboration, teamwork, being able to be leaders in public speaking, things that are very useful in the workforce and to promote agriculture as we move forward.
If someone's interested in joining FFA, who can they get in contact, or maybe where can they go to get more information, either on the local chapter or maybe even the state or national?
Well, first you can talk to a Little Falls FFA member or advisor. We're always willing to talk to you. You can also simply take an agricultural education course here at Little Falls Community High School, and that automatically qualifies you to become a member of FFA. In addition to that, you could check out Little Falls FFA on Facebook, Twitter, or littlefallsffa.org and find out more information there.
We've been speaking with Erin Daninger, the FFA advisor for the Little Falls chapter, all part of FFA Week here on Little Falls Radio. Those interested in applying for up to $1 million in conservation or carbon credit project grant funding through the USDA's Conservation Innovation Grant Program must submit their project pre-proposals by Tuesday. Approximately half of the $20 million in CIG funding available will go towards engaging agricultural producers in projects that contribute to the creation or maturation of carbon credit or environmental markets, leverage private investment for farmer-led conservation and mitigation of water quality issues and or climate change. The CIG program has funded several projects in private lands conservation, including a water quality trading program in the Ohio River Basin and a nitrous oxide credit trading program in the Midwest with the Delta Institute. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service will accept pre-proposals from non-governmental organizations, tribes, or individuals until Tuesday, and will later invite qualifying applicants to submit full proposals. In the pre-proposals, applicants must address natural resource improvements in water quality, soil health, wildlife habitat, or a different but applicable area of concern, including improvements related to the fields of economics or sociology. They may also include descriptions of how historically underserved producers, veterans, and or organic farmers will benefit from their project. The 2014 Farm Bill eliminated a past requirement that mandated applicants provide half of their federal funding match in cash and expanded eligibility for projects that address historically underserved producers. U.S. farmers are expected to cut their planting of most major crops in response to sagging commodity prices, but growers will benefit from falling fuel and transportation costs, this according to the USDA. The USDA projects that farmers will plant 89 million acres of corn this spring, down 1.8% from last year. Growers are expected to plant 83.5 million acres of soybeans, down 0.2% from last year. The reports and projections were released this week at the USDA's annual Outlook Forum. The USDA expects corn prices to remain flat this year at around $3.50 a bushel, but the average soybean price is expected to decline by about $1 to $9 a bushel. Wheat prices are expected to average around $5.10 a bushel, down from $5.90 last year. The 2015 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, a group of prestigious outside experts, has submitted its recommendation to the Health and Human Services Secretary Sylvia Burwell and Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack this week in order to inform the 2015 edition of the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. This week, the secretaries have released the advisory committee's recommendations report online, making it available for public review and comment. The U.S. Departments of Health and Human Services and the Agriculture Department will consider this report along with input from other federal agencies and comments from the public as they develop the Dietary Guidelines for Americans 2015, which will be released later this year. The public is encouraged to view the independent advisory group's report and provide written comments at www.dietaryguidelines.gov for a period of 45 days after publication in the Federal Register. The public will also have an opportunity to offer oral comments at a public meeting in Bethesda, Maryland on March 24th. Those interested in providing oral comments at the March 24th public meeting can register at that same website. Capacity is limited, so participants will be accepted on a first-come, first-served basis. The 14 outside experts who made up the 2015 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee are nationally recognized in the fields of nutrition, medicine, and public health. The committee held 7 public meetings over the past 2 years. The recommendations of the 2015 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee are non-binding and advisory to HHS and the USDA as they draft the guidelines for Americans. And I'm speaking with Kaylee Catherine of the Little Falls FFA chapter as part of the FFA week being celebrated today through next Saturday. Kaylee, what's your position in the FFA chapter?
I am this year's FFA president, so I'm really involved in working with our FFA week promotion. I've always been interested in cattle and all of those things, so FFA was just another way for me to promote my cattle with showing.
And you mentioned you're the FFA president. What are some of the responsibilities of being in charge of the local chapter?
I conduct the meetings and ensure that all of our different activities we're doing runs the way they should be and helping promote FFA to everyone.
And you mentioned the promotions. What are some of the things that are going to be going on next week during FFA week?
We're going to have some lunchtime activities going on for the students to learn more about FFA. We're also going to have a few dress-up days that correspond with different FFA activities and colors, and we're also going to have a teacher appreciation breakfast, and there's a few other little things that we're going to promote.
I know you guys just had contests last week. What were those events, and how did the chapter do?
This past week we had parliamentary procedure, prepared public speaking, and creed contest. Our parley team got first, and we're making it to state. Our creed speaker was third, and our prepared public speaker was fifth.
And what are some of the things that FFA can teach kids that they're interested in, maybe life skills? What are some of the things that FFA gives you that may not be totally ag-related?
It teaches you a lot of responsibility of making sure you follow through with the different contests you're going to be in. Also, leadership. There's a lot of leadership going through with FFA. There's different contests that do leadership. There's different chapter committees that teach you leadership, the community leadership.
And you mentioned the leadership. How have those qualities from FFA helped you in the stuff that you do?
I'm more involved with helping not only FFA but also 4-H and different clubs through the community with pushing people to do more things and leading them to go further in their goals.
What was one of the most interesting things, or something that you learned that you didn't know before FFA?
I learned that there's a lot more to FFA than just farming. There's public speaking, there's different contests that's not related to agriculture necessarily. It's more the leadership and the responsibility contests. There's only a couple that completely revolve around just farming.
And so moving forward, what do you see, how do you see the things you've learned in FFA translating into your future?
I think that FFA has helped a lot with my future because I'm planning on going into ag education, and I feel the responsibilities that I've learned in the leadership is going to help me succeed in becoming an educator in agriculture.
And we've been speaking with Kaylee Catherine, president of the Little Falls FFA chapter, all part of the FFA week that runs Saturday, February 21st through Saturday, February 28th. The Federal Aviation Administration this week released its long-awaited proposal for regulations governing the commercial use of small unmanned aircraft, also known as drones, including in agriculture. The proposed rules apply to small unmanned aircraft systems called UASs under 55 pounds and would limit their use to daytime and visual line-of-sight operations, a requirement that agricultural stakeholders have lobbied against, citing the need for drones to operate over large wheat and cornfields and ranches. The FAA is asking for comments on whether the rules should permit operations beyond line of sight, and if so, what the appropriate limits should be. The proposal would also require the person flying a small UAS to be 17 years old, pass an aeronautical knowledge test every 2 years, and obtain a UAS operator certificate from the FAA. An operator would not need any further private pilot certification. The proposal says flights should be limited to 500 feet in altitude and no faster than 100 miles per hour. In addition, operators must stay out of airport flight paths in restricted airspace and not fly over people except those directly involved in the flight. The public will be able to comment on the proposed regulation for 60 days from the proposed date of publication. Separate from this proposal, the FAA intends to hold public meetings to discuss innovation and opportunities at 6 test sites that were set up to explore UAS potential. These meetings will be announced in a future Federal Register notice. The FAA is also asking for comment on whether the final rules should include an additional, more flexible framework for micro UASs under 4.4 pounds. The proposed regulations announced this week would not apply to model aircraft. Under the FAA implementation's a final rule, the current unmanned aircraft rules remain in effect. They require an FAA exemption for individuals or businesses who want to use small unmanned aircraft in commercial operations. To date, the agency has granted 28 such exemptions, including a handful for precision agriculture. We're speaking with Samantha Phillips, a member of the Little Falls FFA chapter, all part of FFA Week. Samantha talked about some of the activities she's taken part in with FFA.
I'm on the general livestock judging team, and I'm on the parliamentary procedure team, and I do creed speaking, and I was involved in the FFA Week planning committee.
You mentioned creed and the different contests. Which ones did you participate in last week?
I was in the parliamentary procedure and the creed speaking.
What is the interesting part about being part of a creed speaker, or what maybe does a creed speaker have to do?
I had to recite the FFA Creed, the 5 paragraphs, and I think that I really grew a lot from that experience, and it definitely gave me a lot of public speaking skills, and that now I'll be able to go out and I'll be able to share my knowledge of agriculture a lot easier, and
that has definitely seemed to be the theme, that you're able to use these skills outside of the classroom. How have you been able to use those skills in your everyday life?
I think I'm now better able to put my ideas out into the community, and I'm able to make a difference and make a point on what I want to see in our chapter, in my community, in our house.
What goes on in FFA? I mean, it's just a bunch of farm kids that's all they talk about, but what goes on during an FFA meeting?
Usually it's just like any other meeting, but a lot of times when we have our evening meetings, we do activities, and usually they're all ag-related. We had a Christmas meeting, and it was just a regular game that we played, and it didn't have anything to do with animals. And a lot of times, and some of our officers even they don't show animals, and we have a lot, and it's not just animals.
FFA, and I know some people say, well, this moves over into also 4-H. How have the skills that you've learned in FFA maybe translated into different organizations that you're part of?
Again, I've been able to better communicate my ideas and put myself out there. I definitely feel I have made a difference in some of the outcomes of maybe committees and groups I've been in, and I definitely think it's better helped me communicate with people.
Now, if someone's interested in maybe learning, maybe they're a freshman in high school or an 8th grader that's moving up to the high school, how can they get involved with FFA?
I think that there's a lot of ways they can come and talk to our ag teachers here, or there's other, like our chapter officers, they can talk to them. I know our president, she's always willing to help, and just go and talk to anyone in FFA. We're always willing to help, and if you have any questions, we'll answer them.
And we've been talking with Sammy Phillips, part of the Little Falls chapter of the Future Farmers of America, all part of the FFA Week here on Little Falls Radio. And earlier this week, Land O'Lakes Incorporated announced plans to acquire the assets of FLM Plus, a leading marketing, communications, and strategic consulting company with expertise in the agribusiness and rural community sector. Land O'Lakes is a member-owned cooperative with 2013 annual sales of more than $14.2 billion, including Land O'Lakes Dairy Foods, Purina Animal Nutrition, and Winfield. The company does business in all 50 states and more than 60 countries. FLM Plus will become a wholly owned subsidiary of Land O'Lakes, Inc. The company will retain its employee base after closing, which is scheduled for the second quarter of this year. FLM team members located in Minneapolis, Columbus, Washington, D.C., Indianapolis, Chicago, Sioux Falls, and Kansas City. the marketing, communications, and consulting services FLM Plus delivers to their extensive roster of commercial and producer-funded clients will also be available to the Land O'Lakes Inc. member co-ops to help them better meet their own growth goals and respond to emerging market opportunities. This is Farm Director Scott Colum. I'm speaking with Kevin Papp, President of the Minnesota Farm Bureau Federation. Kevin, it's FFA week starting tomorrow and running all through next week. What are some of the things that Minnesota Farm Bureau does to support our FFA members?
Well, certainly we view FFA as the future, not only in agriculture, but the future in our communities. It's the leaders. It's that leadership development. We try to do many things with the FFA on the local, state, and national level, much like Farm Bureau is on the local, state, and national level. We've got almost 200 FFA chapters in Minnesota. One of the things Farm Bureau does is provide them a Farm Bureau membership for that chapter so they can have access to not only things that are going on in policy and in other programs in Farm Bureau, but also to see what opportunities there are in agriculture.
And you mentioned some of the programs, and you mentioned the membership. What are some of the things that the Minnesota Farm Bureau does for our FFA members, whether it be memberships or maybe even some financial contributions?
Well, many financial contributions at different levels, whether it's through our Farm Bureau Foundation, whether it's FFA and Farm Bureau leaders serving on each other's boards. It's interacting with the state officer team. We do a FFA Farm Bureau discussion meet every year, and that allows some FFA members to attend the Washington Leadership Conference. A lot of different opportunities to help their professional development.
Yeah, and you mentioned talking about leadership. How has FFA created maybe some new Farm Bureau, the future Farm Bureau leaders in your organization?
Well, certainly, it's been 36 years since I've had a blue jacket on, but you never forget about the learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve, and that's whether it's in agriculture specifically or doing other things in your community. We've seen many FFA leaders now get further in their career, whether they're in agriculture education, whether they're working for agriculture businesses, or if they're working in other areas that still interconnect with agriculture. I mean, that is our future. That's why it is so important that we do everything we can to talk about the good things in agriculture. And FFA is not sows, cows, and plows anymore. It's all about the agri-science, all those opportunities within agriculture.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, that it isn't all about agriculture anymore. I've been actually seeing more and more non-ag kids get involved in FFA. Why is that a good thing for our student population in general?
Oh, it's a great thing. We've got over 610,000 FFA members nationally, and many not involved in agriculture, many from communities and schools of very good size. And FFA is more than just agriculture. It's leadership development. It gives the students those skills, whether it's in communication, public speaking, being an advocate for agriculture. It's just a great opportunity for them to learn and to grow individually and as a group.
And of course, we have been speaking with Kevin Papp, President of the Minnesota Farm Bureau. We've been talking about FFA because FFA week is coming up, starts tomorrow, runs through next Saturday, the 28th. Thank you so much for your time today, Kevin, and thank you so much for what Minnesota Farm Bureau does to support FFA and our future ag leaders.
Absolutely. It's clear that that's where the future is going to be, and anything we can do to help them succeed is good for all of our communities.
And that concludes this week's local Farm News Week in Review here on Little Falls Radio. Farm News available weekdays at 6:35 a.m. and 4 p.m. on AM 960 KLTF and at 10 a.m. on WYRQ or 24/7 at fallsradio.com. This is Farm Director Scott Colum saying thanks.